Hey, it's Jennifer Lawhon with Lawhon Home Team, and here with your real estate market update for October. Let's get started. So let's talk about a quote. We're going to start with that. My sense is the Case-Shiller National Annual Growth Rate of 19.7% is probably close to a peak, and that year-over-year price increases will slow later this year. So this is by Bill McBride. So we're talking about how we've seen such a huge growth right now, and especially in home price appreciation, that we're projecting that there's going to be a slowdown. Now, that doesn't mean depreciation. It's still projected to appreciate, and let's look at this. So over 2021, the year-over-year house appreciation, we've seen overall, if we look at the Federal Housing Finance Agency, 19.2%, CoreLogic, 18%, Case-Shiller, 19.7%. That's a huge growth that we've seen, right, in appreciation. Look at nationwide, let's look at this. Any state you're seeing in the red right now saw over 20% price appreciation. Now, Florida down here, we're just under 19%. We've seen a pretty good amount of appreciation over the last year as well. Ivy Zellman says that closings are set to decline roughly 10% year over year in the second half of 2021, and home price appreciation is on the cusp of flipping to a decelerating trend. Now again, let me reiterate, decelerating, not depreciating. So in other words, we're still projecting to see home price increase, but just not as big as we have seen. So in other words, they're not projecting so far seeing any type of depreciation. Here's our expected home value change. So 2021, about 11.74%, an annual average of 5.7%. So that's the expected home value change over the next several years. What about the fourth quarter? All right, well, Diana Olick says that fall is usually the start of the slower season for the housing market, but nothing is usual in today's pandemic-driven housing market. Potential homebuyers are seeing a slight rise in inventory and consequently rushing back into the fray. Mortgage applications to purchase a home jumped 7% last week from the previous week. That is the highest level since April of this year. So what's going to happen in the fall? Again, typically we see a slowdown, but with this particular market, we might not be seeing that. Let's look at a map just so you can kind of see why it is so difficult, though, to forecast what we should be seeing. If you look at 2019, that was a typical real estate year. 2020, not so much, and that's why we really can't even compare for last year. Notice because of the pandemic, because we had lockdowns, we saw a very huge, sharp decline in sales. But then when things reopened back up, we had a huge amount of buyer demand, and so we saw a jump in the sales. What's going to happen this year? Notice in the green, we've kind of seen a little bit of a decline. We had this huge jump in January, and then it kind of slowed down, but then we saw a little bit of an increase. But like I said, 2020, if you look at 2020, it was nothing like our normal, as we'll call it, in 2019. Very difficult to forecast right now. But why does it seem like things are slowing down? We did see some things slow down in 2020 towards the end, but not that big. We were still seeing a growth. But right now, we have seen a little bit of a slowdown, at least compared to last year. Let's look at existing home sale prices. These are the numbers for December of each of these years. So this is the home sale prices, or not prices, number of home sales, existing home sales, in December, starting back in 2022, up to 2019. What we're going to see for this year, it'll be interesting. How about active monthly listing count peaks? Now again, this graph is going to show us the last three of our typical real estate years. We're not going to put in 2020 because that was atypical. So 2017, the peak happened in August. 2019, the peak was in September. But then in 2018, they saw their peak in October. And I know for Orlando, so far our peak has been seen in June. Now, whether that changes or not remains to be seen. What about active monthly listing count peak. So for 2020, if you kind of look here, because of the shutdown, we kind of saw our peak in April, and then things kind of went down after that. But could listings increase through this winter? There are 3 reasons why we may see that. 1, pent-up selling demand. We still have a lot of buyers looking for homes. And as more and more Americans are getting vaccinated, more people are becoming more comfortable putting their homes on the market. What about new construction? Well, that is taking off. If you are anywhere near the Orlando area, you would see we have so many new home communities that are just starting to take off now. I know Brent and I bought a home in a new home community just 2 months ago, and already there are a few lots left, but they are selling out fast. Also, the end of forbearance might create new listings. It doesn't mean that there'll be a wave of foreclosures. In fact, they're not even seeing that for many reasons. But instead, homeowners might want to sell their house because they'll have a lot of equity. What about interest rates? Always have to look at the trend of interest rates. This goes back to January of 2020. Notice that we had a sharp fall, right? But we are starting to see an increase, and it's because the economy is starting to recover. Not as fast as many were hoping. It's been a slow recovery, but nonetheless, as it recovers, we will start to see, most likely, a rise in interest rates. Sam Ketter says that many factors led to this increase, including the Federal Reserve communicating that it will taper its support of the capital markets, the broadening of inflation, and emerging energy supply shortages, which compound other labor and material shortages. Mortgage rate projections. So for the 4th quarter this year, still very good, 3.18%. I think that's better than what was originally projected. And then even for 3rd quarter of next year, 3.55%, still excellent rates. In fact, let's look at the next map and you can kind of see. This goes back to 2018. And then you can see up here, towards the end of 18, beginning of 19, we were in the upper 4%. Down here, even if we go into the 3rd quarter of 22 at 3.7%, still very good rates. And how do rates affect your buying power? Here's the problem with waiting too long. Let's just look at an example. Let's say you buy a house at $400,000 at 2.75% interest. Your mortgage rate, meaning principal and interest, would be $1,633. Well, what does that equate to at 4% interest rate? Come over here to this red arrow. That would be a house for $340,000. So look at that difference. That's a $60,000 difference just from the rate going up. Something just to think about. I always love my numbers. But what about sales? I love to look at these maps. This hasn't changed, actually. The closing, I think the last month, it was also 17 days. We're still having quick average days on the market. That's because we still have a big amount of buyer demand right now. Existing home sales year over year. Overall, U.S., we've seen a decline when we compare one year to another. The South, though, has been doing much better. They've seen an increase there. What about existing home sales in thousands? So we're looking at 2019, 2020, and 2021. Notice 2021 has still done much better than some of the other years. We can see that 2020, again, that was our kind of unpredictable year. What about new home sales? New home sales have done, the new home builders have done incredible. They are selling like crazy. At least I can tell you over here in the Orlando area. But there are still plenty. We just had a few over here in West Orlando. If you're interested in this area, I can tell you we have some new home developments that haven't even started selling lots yet. So lots of homes if you're looking for a new home. What about home prices? Existing home prices. Overall in the U.S., if we compare year over year, we've seen a growth of 14.9%. The Northeast has actually seen one of the bigger growths, and South has done pretty well as well. Year over year percent change in price. Currently, we've seen 18.1%, but again, we've talked about how we've been seeing kind of a tremendous growth. The forecast is 2.2%. In other words, we're hopefully going to see maybe a little bit of a slowdown as far as the growth in price. Still growth, again, Still, we're going to see homes appreciate. They're projecting that over the next few years, but just not maybe as fast as we have seen, which is good because maybe that'll help buyers catch up. Housing inventory, seller traffic map. So we saw the buyer, right? Seller traffic map. We still are seeing a little bit of a better, I think, growth with seller traffic. These states, even Florida, I think last month Florida wasn't even a color yet. We were still in the weak color. Now we are starting to see some stable seller traffic, which is good. How about months of inventory of homes for sale? Notice that inventory, so this is over the last 12 months. We start back here at the last September, but notice we had a decline in number. This is how many homes were on the market, inventory. And then we've been seeing a slow but steady increase. What about housing supply year over year? We've already been talking about this, how we have not had enough homes on the market. But notice that it's starting to go up a little bit, which is good. I mean, still in the red, but not as much as February and March were. What about new home inventory? Not in the red at all. Like I said before, they have seen, the new home builders, a good amount of growth. And they have a lot of inventory. If you can look here, here's your inventory. So 2020 is the darker blue. We actually did not have as much inventory with new home builders, but now they're taking advantage of this. They're not stupid, right? They know there's a huge amount of buyer demand. So why not? If we don't have enough resale, why not open up some new home communities? So if you notice in this year, we've seen a lot of growth with that. Buyer demand. The drop in buyer demand we're seeing is par for the course during this time of the year. While we're seeing a decline in showing traffic compared to this point last year, demand continues to exceed that seen in the months leading up to the pandemic. So in other words, if we were to compare last year, we are seeing a little bit of a decline in buyer demand. But compared to the previous year, if we look at 2019, we're actually seeing an increase still. And if you look here, the West is actually seeing a good amount, 9.2%. Here's our buyer traffic map. Now, we actually have a few states in the weak area. We have not had a map like that in quite a while. Florida, still going strong with that. But you notice that we are having a little bit of a change in our buyer traffic. What about FICO score requirements? This is kind of giving you over the last 12 months. We've actually seen a decrease in the FICO score requirements over the last couple months. And for the average FICO score, this is for loans that have already closed. So the conventional loan, the average FICO score for closed loans has been about 756, FHA 656, VA 720. And last but not least, our Orlando update. What are we seeing for sales? Now, if you look again, 2020 is the blue, 2021 is the orange. We have seen slowly every month. So like I was talking about before, our peak so far here for 2021 has been June. Whether that's going to change remains to be seen, but I have a feeling June is going to be our peak for this year. Each month we've seen a slowly decline in sales. What about average sale price? Again, June's been our peak so far this year for our average sale price. We did see a slight increase in August compared to July, but September actually had a slight decline in the average sale price. Still much higher than 2020, but I'll be anxious to see what's going to happen over the last quarter of this year. Just a reminder, we do have our fall buyer and seller guides. They are separate. One is a seller guide and one is specifically a buyer guide. They are free, so if you're interested in checking them out, just send me an email or you can go to our site, lawhonhometeam.com, and fill out the contact us form. If you have any questions, please feel free to call us. And I will see you all next month with the next monthly market update.